Welcome back to Unsolicited Feedback, the podcast where we cut through the noise, skip the corporate jargon, and get real about what actually drives results. Because let's be honest, hope is not a business strategy. I'm your host, Chuck Knabusch, the operations guy. After 40 plus years across the military, corporate America, and now entrepreneurship, I've seen what works, what breaks, and why leadership, planning, and execution are great separators between average and exceptional results. As you're catching the replay, send your thoughts or challenges directly to me at chuck@1310.com. That's chuck@13ten.com. Your time matters, so let's jump straight into today's topic. Quarterly planning, designing 13 weeks that define the entire year. Welcome back to Unsolicited Feedback, where hope is not a business strategy, planning is not optional, and you can't lead a high-performing operation by winging it 1 month at a time. Today, we're talking about quarterly planning, the most overlooked and most misunderstood planning horizon in leadership. Weekly planning keeps momentum. Monthly planning directs energy. But quarterly planning? Quarterly planning determines the trajectory of the entire year. Because a quarter isn't just 3 months. It's 13 weeks. It's 25% of your annual results. And if you lose a quarter, the math gets ugly fast. The biggest problem, leaders mistake quarterly planning for oversized monthly planning instead of strategic design. Too many leaders think quarterly planning is just planning the next few months. It's not. Quarterly planning requires strategic decisions, structural adjustments, resource allocations, system corrections, cross-functional alignment, coordination of priorities, realistic commitments, capacity-based goal setting, and recovery from past underperformance. But here's the real problem. Leaders treat quarterly planning like an extended monthly plan instead of a strategic pivot point. They approach the quarter with guesswork, hope, inertia, legacy expectations, and calendars filled with the same old routines, not intentional design. And an additional challenge, leaders underestimate how fast a quarter evaporates. A quarter feels long until week 3 disappears, week 7 derails, and week 11 punches you in the mouth. You don't have 3 months. You have 13 weeks. And every week, wasted, compounds your gap. So, identify the biggest symptom of the problem. The quarter ends with the same problems it started with. When quarterly planning is broken, you see it. Q1 ends and the same training gaps remain. Q2 ends and the same bottleneck is still throttling output. Q3 ends and the same quality issues continue to drain rework hours. Q4 ends and the annual plan is suddenly no longer realistic. Some other symptoms may include losing 2 weeks at the start of every quarter to get organized, projects slipping from quarter to quarter, leaders who can't articulate quarterly priorities, competing initiatives that overwhelm teams, excessive firefighting, the loudest priorities winning instead of the most important ones, leadership feeling spread thin, results swinging wildly from week to week. One plant I worked with had the same quarter end summary 4 quarters in a row. Behind on training, behind on throughput, behind on maintenance, behind on projects. Not a performance problem, a planning problem. So identify what most people try to do to fix the problem. Well, when leaders realize the quarter is slipping, they typically respond with predictable but unproductive actions. Attempt number 1, they make the goals bigger. If we're behind, we just need to stretch harder. Stretch goals without capacity adjustments equals burnout. Attempt number 2, we add more initiatives. When the quarter starts sliding, leaders bolt on extra projects, crushing bandwidth even further. Attempt number 3, we increase accountability meetings. Let's check progress twice a week instead of once. Congratulations, you now have less time to actually execute. Attempt number 4, ask teams to push through. Effort-based leadership instead of system-based leadership. Attempt number 5, hope the next quarter will be better. The most common and most destructive response, hope has never saved a quarter. So let's identify why those solutions rarely work. Because quarterly problems are rarely caused inside the quarter. They're caused by structural issues left over from previous quarters. They can be training issues, capacity mismatches, supplier instability, leadership bandwidth gaps, or project delays. These aren't quarterly problems. They're cumulative problems. B, the quarter is too long to wing it and too short to recover. This is the paradox. A month is too short to fix structural issues. A year is too long to wait for results. A quarter is the perfect window, but only if you use it with intention. C, leaders don't map the quarter into strategic phases. Strong quarterly planning requires time phasing, sequencing, dependency mapping, resource allocation, and cross-functional coordination. But most leaders plan the quarter like it's one big blob of time. D, they ignore capacity constraints. You cannot increase throughput, improve quality, reduce costs, and complete projects without matching capacity to expectations. E, they don't integrate performance learning from weekly and monthly reviews. Quarterly planning must be fed by trends, recurring issues, data patterns, leading indicators, cross-functional friction, and capacity models. If you don't integrate what you've learned, you will repeat the same quarter you just lived. So let's identify one thing you can do to move the needle. Let's use the 5-part quarterly planning blueprint. This is where high-performing organizations create predictable success. The 5-part quarterly planning blueprint. Step 1, conduct a quarter-end reality assessment. Ask, what were the major wins last quarter? What were the misses? What patterns emerged? What major constraint surfaced? What underperformance rolled forward? And what of last quarter must not repeat? That gives you the truth, not stories. Step 2, rebuild expectations based on capability. Analyze staffing stability, training readiness, equipment health, supplier reliability, process capability, leadership bandwidth, and capacity models. Set quarterly expectations based on math, not optimism. Step 3, identify the 3 to 7 most important quarterly outcomes. Quarterly success requires ruthless focus. Decide what will matter most 90 days from now. What aligns with annual goals? What removes major constraints? What creates the largest productivity gains? And what stabilizes execution? If everything is a priority, then nothing is a priority. Step 4, sequence the quarter into strategic blocks. Don't plan the quarter as a single chunk of time. Break it into execution arcs. Let's say weeks 1 to 3, we're going to launch, accelerate, and stabilize. Weeks 4 through 6, deep execution on core priorities. Weeks 7 through 9, anticipate friction and protect momentum. Weeks 10 through 12, close strong and course correct. Week 13, catch up, recovery, and calibrate. This prevents mid-quarter chaos. Step 5, add a strategic recovery plan for past underperformance. This is the counterintuitive step. If the last quarter underperformed, you must add recovery projects, reallocate resources, reduce competing priorities, accelerate decision making, boost support to bottleneck areas, and protect recovery weeks. Without intentional recovery, underperformance compounds. A quarter is not something you live through. A quarter is something you design. High-performing organizations don't drift from one quarter to the next. They architect the next 13 weeks with precision, clarity, and courage. Strong quarters don't happen by accident. They happen through planning. When leaders intentionally design the quarter, everything becomes possible. Predictable execution, high accountability, strong capacity management, better momentum, fewer surprises, and annual goals that actually stay on track. Because when you control the quarter, you control the year. And that's a wrap for today's episode of Unsolicited Feedback. Thanks for joining me, but don't just nod along and apply something. Apply something from today's conversation, because results don't show up from just listening. They show up because you did something. Even one small action this week will move the needle farther than a month of good intentions. If you want to go deeper, scan the QR code or schedule a 30-minute chat. I'd love to hear how you're using planning, leadership, and execution to make sure hope never becomes your business strategy. Drop a comment and like the episode. I'm Chuck Knabusch. Until next time, stay focused, stay disciplined, and don't you dare rely on hope.